Greetings, the Hijabi Gamer here, and this is not an easy video to make. I've been avoiding it, but I really have to make this. It's going to be a little controversial, and honestly, I really don't want to go through complicated religious debates in the comments below. I'm not an expert, I'm not a scholar, however, I have to make this video to respond to some of the things Elijah Shaeffer said in the last Friday episode of You Are Here. Now, it's important for me to make it clear I have a huge amount of respect for Sydney Watson and Elijah Shaeffer. I've been following Sydney Watson for over a year now. In fact, it's through her that I found out about You Are Here and Elijah Shaeffer. And then in turn, through You Are Here, I found out about Slightly Offensive. So this video isn't meant to be an attack on any of them. In fact, it would be a huge honor to be invited to Texas to meet them in person. However, at the same time, I'm not a fan of having sticks shoved up my nose. I have managed to, so far, avoid that. I mean, I don't even like getting water up my nose. A solid object? Yeah. Doesn't mean I wouldn't love to meet them in Texas one of these days. So, huge amount of respect for them. However, some of the things he did say on Friday really did bother me. I tried to super chat, but YouTube would not let me. It took me at least a dozen attempts, and I finally realized I had to make a video because YouTube wouldn't let me say anything. And I wasn't trying to say anything controversial. I was basically saying, hey, I'm a practicing Muslim. Check out my YouTube channel. That's about it. YouTube would not let me say that. So those super chats were not easy to do. I tend to watch You Are Here after the fact because it tends to run a little late for me, so I tend to prefer to just watch it in one huge chunk the following day, though I've been avoiding it for the last 2 days because that's a constant reminder to me that I need to make this video. So let me be clear, this video is not an attack on anyone, not on Elijah Shaeffer at all. Like I said, I think we agree on a lot more things than we disagree on. Despite him being a Christian and me obviously being a Muslim. Now, I'm sure probably people are thinking, oh, Kat, you must think Elijah Shaeffer is Islamophobic. No, I don't. I'm not saying that. Let me be clear. I am not saying Elijah Shaeffer is Islamophobic. And I suspect that Islamophobia isn't as prevalent as a lot of people think. Ignorance of Islam, a lack of interaction with Muslims, a lack of understanding of Islam, yes. But Islamophobia, no. That means you just hate Islam. But I think a lot of his people don't understand the religion. One of the things that people in my live chat made me realize is, you see, I'm in New Jersey. We have a lot of Arabs, a lot of Muslims in my area. And I thought that was everywhere. I thought that people like me, most of the Muslims I know are like me. You know, just Americans who, I was born in this country, or people who are citizens. My father immigrated, but he puts up an American flag every 4th of July. He's very heavily involved in politics. He's a Republican. Most of the Muslims I know are just normal Americans who never agreed with any of the violence after just normal people. And I assumed that most people in America had met people like me. But I suspect now that I was wrong. I assumed that. And then people made comments in my live stream that made me realize that I'm actually something new to them. So maybe Elijah Shaeffer hasn't met people like me. I mean, he seemed surprised when I super chatted that I'm a conservative. Like I said, my father's a Republican. I'm registered Republican because when I needed to register to vote, I had no idea what I was doing, and my father is an active member of the Republican Party. So I put down Republican. There are a lot of conservative Muslims who are Republican. It may come as a surprise, but, they've been talking about how a lot more minorities are voting Republican. In addition, mainstream media lies. I mean, come on, they lie about everything at this point. For a long time, they wanted to smear Islam and make Muslims look bad and turn us into the bad guy. For years, we turned on the news, and the things they would say about Islam was really frustrating because a lot of it wasn't true. So, I mean, come on, we know mainstream media lies about everything at this point. Are you surprised they've lied about Muslims? So if you're relying on CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News as a source for information about Islam, that's not a very good source. And finally, Muslims themselves don't do a very good job of marketing Islam. A lot of Muslims do a lot of dumb garbage in the name of Islam. Stuff that isn't even Islam, but they do it. And then mainstream media jumps on it instead of doing actual research and saying, oh, wait a minute. No, they find some superficial way to support their argument. Oh, see, this is why Islam is a violent religion. And then they find some random line, chop it out of context and go, see, this is proof why Muslims are violent. So Muslims do a lot of dumb stuff in the name of Islam. And then the mainstream media jumps on it, and it's really, really frustrating. Now, one of the things I hear a lot of people say is Islam needs a reformation. No, it doesn't. What Islam needs is for people to go back to actually practicing Islam. What real Islam, what Islam actually says, would shock people. People like Elijah Shaeffer who think Islam needs a reformation. For example, the whole thing about women in Islam. Islam has made it pretty clear women and men are equal in the eyes of God. Islam granted women rights 1,500 years ago that the West would not give women until the 20th century, like the right to own property, to ask for a divorce, to refuse marriage. These were rights that were given to women 1,500 years ago. I've already given the example of Sayyida Khadija, the first wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him. She was a businesswoman. He worked for her. She was the wealthy one. And she asked him to marry her. There were a lot of very strong women during the life of the Prophet that a lot of Muslims these days like to forget about. The idea that a woman can be forced into marriage is not Islam. It's Arab culture. One of the other assumptions people make about Islam is that most Muslims are Arab. That's not true. Most Muslims aren't Arab. I happen to be Arab. I'm an Arab American. My family's from Egypt. Yes, Egypt is an Arab country. But there are Muslims in China. We hear about the Uyghurs, Russia, Europe, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Australia. All over the world are Muslims. Something like 12%, 15% of Muslims are Arab. A lot of Muslims speak Arabic because the Quran is in Arabic. Some Pakistani Muslims speak better Arabic than Arabs. But just because someone is Muslim does not mean they are Arab. That's another wrong assumption people make. One of the things that frustrates me is when people look at me and they think, oh, that poor oppressed woman wearing hijab. I chose to wear it. I took it off. I put it on. I feel this is what empowers me. This was a choice I made. No one forced me to it. I know a lot of Muslim women who wore it, chose to take it off. Their family has not owned them or done anything to them. They're still close to their families. They've visited us with their daughters. No problem at all. But I chose to wear it. I do not consider myself an oppressed woman. I consider myself a stronger woman for wearing the hijab. This is a choice I made. If I decided to take it off, my family would not condemn me for it. They wouldn't agree, but they wouldn't force me. This is a choice I made. I'm tired of the whole women are oppressed in Islam. Do women get oppressed? Yes, but that is not Islam. Period. That is not Islam. So another thing that I hear a lot of people talk, Islam is far more complicated. And a lot of people talk about the Sharia law. And it's like if you actually understood Sharia law, it's far, far more complicated. I am no expert on it. But the example people often give when they point it out is they chop off people's hands if they steal. It's not that simple. It's not, oh my God, you stole an apple from a supermarket. You're getting your hand cut off. That's from that original animated Aladdin movie. No. I once asked my father, because I work in a store, and a lot of people there were people stealing to use the money to sell it and buy drugs. And my father's like, no, They would not be punished by getting their hand cut off because they have a problem. They're addicted to drugs. They have a problem. If you're financially struggling, if you can't feed yourself, these are things taken into consideration. On top of that, you can't just suspect someone of theft. You need to see them in the act, see them put it in their pocket, need to see it for your own eyes. You can't just be like, oh, well, they have a copy of a video game they didn't have before, so they must have stolen it. It's the same thing with the whole stoning a woman. First off, if a woman just becomes pregnant and appears out of wedlock, you can't, because you need witnesses. People can't be like, oh, well, I saw her pregnant. That's not proof she did anything. I'm sorry. And if a man attacks a woman, he's the one who gets punished, not her. A lot of idiot people these days blame the woman. And this is in the West, too. Sometimes women are blamed for being attacked by a man. But a lot of people in the Middle East will blame the woman for a man attacking her. And then she ends up pregnant, or she gets punished for it. That's not Islam again. And in fact, again, the conditions required to be met at all means that the punishment is so rarely carried out. You literally need 4 people to have seen them in the act, which, I mean, I guess these days, given OnlyFans, maybe I shouldn't say anything. But, I mean, there's a story of a woman who went to the Prophet and admitted she committed adultery. And he's like, but you're pregnant. The baby is innocent. Go have your baby. She comes back. He's like, the baby needs to be, breastfed. He kept sending her away, hoping she would not come back. And she did, because she said she wanted to be punished. That's one of the things. You can be punished in this life to avoid a punishment in the next life. He did not want her to come back because he did not want to do it. So the punishment is should so rarely be carried out. But you make it sound like, oh, this woman is suddenly pregnant. She must have committed something wrong. Stone her to death. That's not Islam. It happens in the name of Islam, but it's not Islam. And it's really frustrating. I'm not an expert. Keep in mind. I am not a scholar. My father is an expert. You want to hear about Islam correctly? My father. But it's far, far more complicated than going, oh, we cut one verse from the Quran to prove we were right. This is a barbaric religion. So much more deeper than that. As for Muslims and Christians, I posted recently in my community tab a clip from the movie The Message. When the Muslims initially were being persecuted in Mecca, right? This is true. Abyssinia, or the king of Ethiopia, they decided, a lot of them the first Muslims were slaves or were very poor, and they were being oppressed. So what they decided to do was to go to Ethiopia, or Abyssinia, where they knew a just Christian king lived. When they fled, people from Mecca were sent to follow them and drag them back. And they stood in front of the Abyssinian king. And at one point they were talking about the differences between Islam and Christianity. And you can see the clip for yourself. At one point the Christian king draws a line in the sand and says the differences between us and you is no thicker than this line. Islam calls Christians and Jews people of the book. And for a very long time, Muslims had very good relationship with Jews and Christians. People say you drove the Jews out of Spain. That's not true. It wasn't until the Muslims were first out of Spain that the Jews were also forced out of Spain. At one point, when the Eastern Orthodox and Western Christians were fighting, Eastern Orthodox Christians would surrender to the Muslims because they knew they would be treated better by the Muslims than their own fellow Christians. For Muslims, the difference between the way you interpreted the Trinity in different ways did not matter. I know I've heard people talk about how, Muslims had a Christian tax. Yeah, that was so they didn't have to serve in the military. Yeah, it was so they didn't have to face a conflict of interest fighting fellow Christians. It has nothing to do with being a Christian. It has to do with the fact that, in the sense that, we need to tax people who aren't Muslim. It was because they didn't have to serve in the military. Whereas this was hundreds of years back when, wars were fought with swords. and people were dying left and right, and everyone was serving in the military. Well, they told the Christians they don't have to, and they paid a tax instead. Honestly, especially when it comes to Christianity, my own father is a member of my town's clergy. He's been, working with the clergy of our town for years. We've had Ramadan dinners in local churches. As I said, we call Christians the people of the book. It's only recently, especially recently, with the whole Middle Eastern conflict, which I'm not going to go into. It is so ridiculously complicated. It's and as someone who sees it from a different side than most other people do, I'm not going to go into it. I do not want comments about it because I'm not going to go into it. I also have to be very careful what I say about it because, let me just say this, Patriot Act, okay? I still know how to censor what I say. It's really frustrating to hear people say things about Islam, and I can't blame them. That's the important thing. I can't blame them because there's just so much. Muslims aren't doing a very good job of preventing it. We try. One of the reasons I do have a YouTube channel is for people to see that most Muslims are normal people who just have a different religion, and we don't hate America. It's funny to hear that when you go to Egypt and everyone loves America. And a few years back, I went to my cousin's wedding, and it was basically an American wedding. And the idea that you can't be a practicing conservative, believing Muslim. That's me. I know people might be. Look at me. I'm 100%. A believing, practicing Muslim, okay? But at the same time, anyway, I don't know what else to say. I'm trying to, this video is getting pretty long. I hope this helps a little. Please share this with Elijah Shaeffer. Like I said, this isn't meant to be an attack on him. It's hurt. I had to respond. We aren't, like I said, but again, I can't blame him. We aren't doing a very good job of marketing ourselves to the world. We aren't practicing our religion. A lot of people have forgotten it. I feel that a lot of the Muslims today in the Middle East, if they actually really looked at Islam. Remember, for a time, Islam basically ruled a large part of, was in control of Northern Africa. A lot of the great discoveries we have today are because of the Muslims. Things like algebra, chemistry, geometry. The Muslims had a huge hand in. And anyway, I had to make this video. I don't know what else to say. If there are any post reasonable questions, nothing about the conflict in the Middle East, please share this with Elijah Shaeffer. Elijah, let me know what you think. My email address is feline.revolution@gmail.com. I've never hid that. It comes up in the about. Like I said, I genuinely have respect for you and Sydney Watson. We probably agree on a lot more than we disagree. And maybe one day I'll get to meet you in Texas. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the tower, or at least, Elijah, I hope to see you on You Are Here. And I'm sorry, I'm not usually there when it's live. It's rare when I catch it live.